My name is Brigitta Best. I have been living in Luxembourg since 1986. I was born in 1959 in Hamburg. I'm an after-war child, so to say. I am an IP specialist, intellectual property, and here I'm specialized in trademarks. I started in 1995 my own business here in Luxembourg and grew from 0 to 50 people in 3 different countries, and yeah, so that's me. I grew up with art. My father was an opera singer. Actually, he couldn't make real money with it, so this is why he had a job next to this, but music was everywhere in our family. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm supporting artists and help them, you know, to make a living from their art. So next to my job, I try to do a lot of charity work for artists on the one hand, but also for nature. So what we do is we help artists to learn how to make a living, and then the artists have to help us with social projects, whether it is for animals, you know, in Africa or the Seychelles, or whether it's having music projects for people with Asperger autism, or our song we did with Ukrainian and Luxembourgish singers, für zusammen stark zu sein, to be strong together, to show our solidarity in the Ukraine and for Ukraine. I was 11 years old at high school when we were shown the films of the liberation of the concentration camps. And from that moment on, I was totally ashamed to be a German citizen. I hated it. And I said to myself that I will do everything I can to be a good person in life. You know, my parents, my mom was a child when this whole war happened. My father was 18 when he had to go to war, not that he wanted it. He was in France. He was shot 5 times and lost 2 fingers and almost died, and only because of human beings, civilians who helped him, he survived. He was 18 years old. Some French people found him badly wounded, and they took him, even that he was the enemy, they took him into their house. You know, because he was just a boy basically, and helped him, and you know, the doctors came and so on and so on. He was almost dead. A nurse actually took care of him afterwards, and she was off for a couple of days, and they put him in a room because they thought that he would die anyway. And when she came back on Monday morning, she said, "Where's Arno? Oh, you can't help him anymore, he will die." And she just didn't give up, you know, and got a veterinary doctor who then operated him, because the 5 shots in the back were completely infected, and that saved his life. And you know, when we were kids, he would always bring us to France. He learned French. He always talked about how incredibly grateful he was, you know, to France and French people, because even that he was the enemy, they saved his life. And that had a huge impact on me as well. So on one hand, being traumatized about what my people had done to the world, and to Jewish people especially. And on the other hand, having a dad who had to go through this, even that he didn't want it, but didn't die and was helped by other human beings. And so for me, human dignity is untouchable. And I just try to live my life in that way, you know. So that's my after-war upbringing. But I think it had a huge impact on me, yeah. And one of the most touching moments also in my life was when I visited Jerusalem and I went to the Waving Wall and I touched it and I felt like the guilt of a whole nation was on my shoulders. So, yeah, and therefore, you know, today, wherever I can, I try to make up a tiny bit. There was no question. For me, it was absolutely clear when this war happened. No one of us knew how long it would take, but you know, just to be a human being and just to help as much as you can, right? And this is why we also made this song. It's about solidarity. It's about to be strong together. That was not a question at all. It was absolutely natural. Yeah.
So you would say that like you had to act, like intrinsically you just had to do it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, I didn't know anything about Ukraine. You know, but what happened there, especially, you know, with Bucha, it was so awful. Yeah, you know, I'm not a politician or anything. I'm just a private person, but the will was so strong that I had to do this little part I can do. You know, when it comes to the people who came here to Luxembourg, the refugees, everyone has their story. Mostly these are women with children, right? And I just wanted to help and want to help, and this is sort of what I try to do. First of all, when I grew up in my generation, everything that happened was so horrible that we all did swear to ourselves that this will never ever happen again, and that we had to do everything we can to be friends. When the European Union started and when it actually, you know, really became reality, I was such a happy person because I thought this is the way to go. You know, in the 90s, you had the feeling that Russia was opening up. You know, the USSR was falling apart, and you know, these countries became free. The DDR collapsed, and you know, Germany was reunited. So all of this, it seemed that we've learned from the past, and that our generation, that, you know, we would do everything we can to make sure that there is peace in this world, at least in Europe. You know, there were other things going on in other countries, but you know, for me it was at that point all Europe. And when Bucha happened, it was such a shock because it was a realization that there are people who don't respect human dignity. And it was just such an incredible shock that I said to myself, whatever I can do, I have to do something about it. We cannot allow evil to win. At least try to get a balance. You know, when I was young, I always thought I'd do anything I can to make the world a better place. Now I'm in my 60s, and I have to realize that there is bad in the world, there is evil in the world, but we have to make sure that there is a balance. So if I, with my little piece of sand I am, so to say, you know, if I can make a tiny bit of difference, I want to do that, because then I have the feeling that I lived my life with purpose. You know, at that point, I had started my sort of little non-profit organization called Voice, Art and Social right when the pandemic hit, and all the artists had no work anymore because everything was closed, you know. So this is actually when it started, and when the Ukraine war started, I got, you know, the artists together, and together we said we have to do something. So actually Keith Grant, one of our artists, he's, by the way, 95 years old and still painting every day. And he immediately said we had organized an art exhibition, a nature art exhibition at Biodiversum, but he immediately was prepared also to help and to support, and so he started making a first painting for Ukraine. I got in contact with Ukraine and met Inna Yaremenko and Nikola Charov. Then we organized a dinner where we also, you know, made donations and so on. And yeah, and then we had this idea, why don't we bring Luxembourgish singers and Ukrainian refugee singers together and create a song? And we made a music video as well, which is To Be Strong Together, wir zusammen stark zu sein, to show our solidarity. And yeah, we are just trying everything we can, you know, to show that we have to stand behind Ukraine. Yes, exactly. So he donated the 4 paintings, which was really wonderful. That was a thank you for. He always wanted to have a professional book about him and his career. And so Voice, Art and Social, we helped him. We made it happen. And as a thank you, he said, well, now I will help. And he wanted to help Ukraine, and therefore he created these 4 paintings. So with the sale of these paintings, we were able to buy 4 ambulances. And we also donated, I think, 25,000 euros to Taitanovi. So that's wonderful that art actually can do that. Mm-hmm. I think the main reason really is the friendships and the contacts I have built in Luxembourg with Ukrainian people. And they are amazing people. They are hardworking. When I see how these women, you know, fight to protect their children on one hand, to have them as much integrated as possible here in Luxembourg, so, you know, that they have a childhood. Like, as I told you, my mom didn't have a childhood. So she always told me, and I thought this is so important. And, you know, these women, I mean, 95% of these women have actually university degrees or have been independent. You know, I started my own business in '95 with no help. At that time, trying to get money from banks or from investors was impossible. You know, one of the reasons why I started is because my then husband decided to move to Japan to be with another woman. And so I was alone with 3 children, you know, not really any support. And I started my own business. I experienced how hard it was. And it took me 7 years before I actually really made money. So when I see these women who partly really were successful businesswomen in Ukraine, I just wanted to help. wanted to try at least to help get their diplomas authorized, or when they had businesses, make sure that they can start a business again here. For example, one lady, Lilia Lekhashva, she had a bakery, a patisserie and bakery close to Kiev. But since she didn't have a formal education the way we have it here, it took us almost 2 years, to actually get her authorized. But it actually happened this year in February, and she now can finally start her business. So this is really wonderful. It's really the Ukrainian people here in Luxembourg that keep me going. So, since I grew up in a generation where we girls didn't really have many rights. I mean, for example, my teacher had to come to my parents at home and convince them that they would allow me to go to high school, because it was not normal. When I finished high school and I wanted to do an education as a banker at a very large bank, the director asked me, "Why do you want to work? You look quite nice. You can get a husband." So, it was just, it was not normal as a girl or as a young woman to have your own career, right? But for whatever reason, I was always driven, and because I know what it means, to build something from scratch and how hard it is, it's just completely normal for me that, of course, I try to help others as well. Having said that, I really truly believe in equality, and I don't think it makes sense, for example, to give women more power than men. We have to be equal. We have to be on the same level. And for example, this morning, I have a granddaughter. She is 14 months old, and she loves machines. And this morning we had to actually go to a place where you can rent machines, and they had these huge trucks and so on there. She was fascinated, and I thought, how amazing is it that I know that this girl can become whatever she wants. And that's what we were, so to say, preparing, for the girls, for the women, for the kids of today. So yeah, it's important. I think it's absolutely wonderful, especially in the beginning when we also made concerts, singing concerts and so on. It was just wonderful to see how many people took people into their homes, welcomed them, and the solidarity. What I've seen is absolutely incredible and amazing. Having said that, I must admit, so I have been trying very, very hard to find apartments for some of these women with the children, and that is unfortunately more or less impossible. I tried everything. I made beautiful maps. We made sure that these women, that they sort of make 2 to 3 times the amount of money the rent would cost, because I knew this is what was expected. But the biggest problem really is, it's not that there are no apartments available for, let's say, a price these women can afford, which is between 1,000 and 1,200 euros a month, right? Cold. It is that they have children, and that the people who own these apartments absolutely don't want to rent their apartments to people with children. So we had cases, where women had to leave their living space, which was provided by Red Cross and so on. Really within 2 weeks, they had to leave, and then they had to go to Kirchberg and live in a tent. And I tried everything to find a solution. Impossible. You know, it's really pretty much impossible. And that's very sad. But, you know, and I work with some women who still, unfortunately, have to be, you know, in these homes where they live with, one, for example, lives with her 2 boys on 12 square meters. And honestly, the way these rooms are, and the way these kitchens and toilets and so on, it's just not good. So on one hand, I think everyone is very, very, very thankful that they can stay here, that they can live here. But it's incredibly hard to get out of this into a normal life. You know, where you work, where your kids go to school, everything we take for granted, right? It's almost impossible. And that's very, very sad. And I think here, as a country, we must do better.
Would you say this is the biggest shortcoming of Luxembourg?
I think so. I think so, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Everything else, it's wonderful, you know, the support also when it comes to Luxembourg support within the European Union to make sure that the Ukraine, you know, gets enough money to continue supporting itself and so on. All of this is really fantastic. I think most of the smaller kids especially, I understand that when you're a teenager and you come here and you've seen all the things in Ukraine, that it's very, very difficult, you know, and as a teenager it's always difficult. I have 3 kids and 5 grandkids. I know what it means, and I was once a teenager myself. It's a difficult age, you know, but I think everything is done here really to try to integrate the kids into society. So, yeah, so do we do everything in a perfect way? No, but I think we as, you know, Luxembourgish society, we do a lot, and I hear a lot of positive remarks from Ukrainians here as well. And unfortunately, not all the people I tried to help, it worked out. But it is what it is, you know. But in general, I would say, yes, you know, helping people to build sort of a new existence here in Luxembourg. That always has been in my whole professional life. My biggest joy and pride was to actually see people who worked with me, you know, that I helped them becoming successful, and even more successful than me. Why not? You know, it's wonderful when you see that. So I think this and that, you know, sending these ambulances to the Ukraine, I think that that was special as well. That is special. My heart is very close to that song. Unfortunately, it's not played that much, not used that much, which is sad because it's a beautiful song. And it really, really, I think especially, you know, as early on as it was, it gave a lot of joy to the Ukrainian singers who were here. And, you know, this was new to them, that they actually could get together with Luxembourgish singers, with also a Luxembourgish kids choir as well, Solver Spatzen, and see that, you know, in art, there are no wars, there are no borders. Art connects everyone and everything. So yeah, that I'm a bit proud of as well. And it was really wonderful and very, very humbling to meet at the Ukraine Gala event, you know, the Taitanovi people. That was very, very touching, and it was just wonderful that we could, through the sale of one of Keith Grant's paintings, could actually make a good donation to Taitanovi. Yeah, so I think, and hopefully we will be able to do more. You know, sometimes people ask me, why do you do so much charity? Why do you do that? And for me, the reason is very simple. Because they say, well, you know, you don't get anything from that. That's not true at all. Number one, when you do this kind of work, you actually witness and experience how many good people there are in this world. So many everyday people who do something good on a daily basis. And that really, you know, feeds your heart and your well-being, because at the end of the day, most of us want to be good and want, you know, to have goodness in this world. So it, you know, it gives so much. Not monetary values or anything like that, but it's good for your heart and for your soul.